Eli, a solitary rancher who had spent most of his life surrounded only by the rolling fields, cattle, and the quiet hum of nature, felt a profound emptiness that wealth and self-sufficiency could never fill. His days were long and predictable. Sunrise brought chores, tending the livestock, repairing fences, and the occasional trip into town for supplies. Yet, despite the comfort of his well-stocked ranch and the stability of his routine, there was a loneliness that weighed heavily on him, an ache for companionship he had long convinced himself he did not need. One sweltering afternoon, as he wandered through the bustling town market on an errand, his eyes were drawn to a small, fenced-off pen where a group of children were being sold, their futures treated as little more than transactions. Among them sat a young girl, her dark eyes wide with cautious curiosity, her lips pressed into a thin line of defiance or fear, and a label tacked above her reading deaf. Most people passing by ignored her or whispered disparaging remarks, calling her useless, a burden, or a lost cause. Something about her stillness, her alert gaze, and the fragile yet unyielding way she held herself stirred a strange mix of pity, admiration, and inexplicable connection in Eli's chest. Without fully understanding why, he stepped forward, listened to the price, $1, and, on an impulse that surprised even himself, handed over the coin. As the market vendor shrugged and handed the girl over, Eli felt a flutter of uncertainty. He had no idea what he was taking on, nor the challenges that awaited him. But for the first time in years, a spark of purpose ignited within him, a sense that his life, previously marked by routine and solitude, might be about to change in ways he could not yet imagine. He walked back to his ranch with the girl quietly in tow, feeling her cautious eyes on him, wondering if she would trust him and sensing that her presence, small, yet profound, would challenge every assumption he had about his own heart, about family, and about the unexpected ways life could shift from isolation to connection, with a single daring choice. That day, what began as a simple transaction for $1 became the first step toward a bond that neither Eli nor the girl, Leela, as he would soon learn her name, could have anticipated, a bond that promised to transform their lonely worlds forever. Bringing Leela to the ranch proved far more challenging than Eli had anticipated, and the first days were marked by tension, uncertainty, and the quiet frustration of two lonely souls trying to bridge an invisible gap. Leela, cautious and wary, moved through the vast house and yard with small, deliberate steps, as if measuring every corner for potential danger. She said nothing, her silence heavy and sometimes unnerving, and Eli realized that her deafness was more than a label, it was a wall she had built to protect herself from a world that had been cruel and unkind. He tried to speak to her, offering simple words of welcome and reassurance, but they seemed to drift past her, unheard or ignored, leaving him feeling helpless and frustrated. At night, he would catch glimpses of her sitting alone by the fire, or staring out across the fields, her small frame hunched with a mixture of fear and resignation. Yet, despite the initial distance, Eli noticed moments of subtle awareness, the way she mirrored his movements while he worked, the careful attention with which she observed the animals, and the spark of intelligence that flickered in her eyes whenever she seemed to understand more than she revealed. Slowly, he began experimenting with gestures and simple signs, pointing to objects, mimicking actions, and watching for her reactions. Each small acknowledgement, from her a nod, a look of recognition, or a tentative smile, felt like a victory, a tiny breakthrough in the silence that separated them. For Eli, these moments were both humbling and exhilarating. He realized that care was not simply a matter of providing food, shelter, or safety, but of patience, empathy, and the willingness to meet someone in their own world rather than forcing them into his. Leela, in turn, began to test the boundaries of trust, inching closer to him during chores, allowing him to guide her hand over a fence post or show her how to handle a calf. Their interactions were quiet, almost imperceptible to an outsider, but for Eli, each small connection was monumental, each hesitant gesture a sign that the walls around Leela's heart were beginning to crack. By the end of those first few days, Eli understood that what he had taken in for $1 was far more than a child in need of care. She was a remarkable, perceptive, and resilient spirit who, if he approached with patience and understanding, could awaken something in his own life that he had thought long lost, the possibility of companionship, trust, and the beginnings of a family neither of them had expected to find. As the days turned into weeks, the silence between Eli and Leela slowly began to break, replaced by subtle signs of understanding that neither had expected. One late afternoon, while Eli was mending a fence, in the golden light of the setting sun, he noticed Leela watching him intently from the edge of the yard. Tentatively, she imitated his movements, bending, lifting, and mimicking the motions of his hands. At first, Eli thought it was mere curiosity, but as he observed more closely, he realized she was learning, adapting, and responding in ways that went far beyond mimicry. She was communicating through action. Encouraged, he began to use simple gestures deliberately, pointing to tools, signaling tasks, and offering signs for everyday actions. Lila's face lit up when she understood, her eyes sparkling with triumph at each small success. This was their first real connection, fragile but significant, a bridge being built across a chasm of silence and distrust. In the evenings, Eli would sit with her on the porch, slowly introducing basic sign language, his large calloused hands patiently forming letters and symbols as Lila mirrored him, her own hands stiff at first, but gradually fluid, eager to participate. She began to respond, using gestures to ask for food, to indicate where she wanted to go, or simply to express curiosity about the world around her. The ranch, once a place of solitary labor and quiet echoes, started to feel alive in a new way, as if her presence alone had awakened a dormant warmth in Eli's heart. He began noticing her small quirks, how she laughed when a calf nuzzled her, how she would crouch to watch a bird take flight, and how her eyes followed his every movement with keen attention. Eli, who had spent years avoiding emotional attachments, felt an unfamiliar tenderness and protectiveness for her. He realized that Lila was not just a child in need of care. She was a partner in discovery, a presence who challenged him to see the world differently and to connect in ways he had long thought impossible. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in streaks of pink and gold, Eli looked at Lila and felt a deep, almost overwhelming sense of possibility. Their bond was still fragile, tentative, and unspoken. Yet it was real, a quiet promise that, with patience, trust, and time, they could bridge the gap between loneliness and connection, fear and trust, silence and understanding. It was the first step toward a relationship that would change both of their lives forever. One crisp morning, as Eli went about his routine, checking the fences and guiding the cattle, he noticed Lila moving beside him with an unusual attentiveness, her eyes scanning every corner of the pasture and every subtle movement of the animals. At first, he assumed she was simply imitating him, as she often did, but it soon became clear that she was noticing things he himself might have missed. A sudden low snort from a bull caught her attention, and she pointed, her small hand trembling slightly, urging Eli to step back, just as the animal pawed the ground in agitation. He froze, astonished, realizing that her instinct saw, perhaps her intuition had anticipated danger before it even fully manifested. Over the next several days, similar moments occurred. She could predict when a calf was about to wander into a muddy ditch, when a horse was uneasy enough to need gentle guidance, and even when a fence post had loosened before it fell. Eli was stunned. The deaf girl he had purchased for $1 was not only aware of her surroundings, but possessed a rare, almost uncanny ability to read the behavior of animals, an instinct that many seasoned ranchers spent years trying to develop. He began to rely on her in ways he had never imagined, guiding her attention to tasks and allowing her insights to shape his decisions in managing the ranch. But beyond practicality, what struck him most was the depth of her intelligence and perception. Lila was more than a child who needed protection. She was a thoughtful, observant, and perceptive partner who brought a fresh perspective to his solitary life. This revelation ignited in Eli a mixture of awe and gratitude. He had purchased a child for $1, but what he had gained was far more valuable: a connection, a companion, and a presence that challenged him to see the world differently. As they worked together, a new rhythm developed between them, one built not on words but on understanding, trust, and the subtle language of gestures, glances, and shared intuition. Eli felt his heart opening in ways he had thought impossible, realizing that Lila's talents, resilience, and quiet wisdom were slowly reshaping the ranch and him into something fuller, warmer, and more alive than either could have anticipated. By the end of that week, the ranch no longer felt like a place of isolation. It had become a space of partnership, where Eli and Lila, through patience, observation, and mutual respect, were discovering not just the contours of the land and animals, but the contours of each other's hearts, laying the groundwork for a bond that would grow stronger with every shared challenge and triumph. As Eli and Lila grew closer, the walls around her heart began to soften, revealing glimpses of a past marked by neglect, fear, and loneliness that mirrored, in some ways, Eli's own isolation. One quiet evening while the sun dipped low and painted the ranch in a soft amber glow, Leila hesitantly gestured toward the small cabin where she had slept. Then toward herself and finally with a trembling hand indicated memories she had long kept locked away. Eli, sensing the gravity of her unspoken story, encouraged her with gentle signs, patient gestures, and reassuring nods, creating a safe space where she felt she could reveal fragments of her life. She told him through signs and carefully chosen expressions about the people who had dismissed her, the moments when she had gone hungry or feared being hurt, and the countless times she had had to hide or stay silent to survive. Eli's heart ached with empathy. He had never imagined that the fragile girl he rescued carried such invisible burdens, and yet he felt a profound admiration for her resilience. In turn, he shared pieces of his own life, not in words, but through actions, stories of the ranch, and the quiet routines that had defined him, allowing Leila to see that he too had known solitude and longing. This mutual vulnerability forged a deeper connection, creating a bridge of trust between them that neither could have anticipated. For the first time, Leila allowed herself to relax in his presence, laughing softly at small joys, leaning on him when she felt uncertain, and even guiding him in ways that revealed her intelligence and insight. Eli, in witnessing her growth and courage, felt a transformation within himself. The walls he had built around his own heart began to crumble, replaced by a tender protectiveness and a genuine desire for connection. Their bond evolved from caretaker and dependent to something resembling family, a relationship defined by shared understanding, empathy, and mutual respect. The ranch, once merely a place of labor and routine, became a haven where both could heal, learn, and discover the unexpected joy of companionship. In revealing her past, Leila not only entrusted Eli with her pain, but also allowed him to witness the strength, courage, and determination that had kept her alive and resilient, despite the cruelty of the world. By the end of this chapter in their lives, Eli no longer saw her as a child he had rescued. He saw her as a remarkable, courageous individual whose presence illuminated his own life, teaching him that love, trust, and family could emerge from the most unlikely beginnings, and that even the deepest loneliness could be transformed into connection, warmth, and hope. Word of Eli's $1 girl began to spread through the small town, carried on whispers, curious glances, and judgmental murmurs, and it was in long before outsiders' opinions threatened to intrude on the fragile harmony Eli and Leila were building on the ranch. Townsfolk questioned Eli's decision, mocking Leila for her supposed uselessness and treating her with the same disdain they had once shown at the market. Some whispered that she was a burden, others openly doubted her intelligence or capability, and a few even suggested that Eli had made a foolish choice, buying a child who could never truly help herself or him. At first, Eli felt a mixture of anger and frustration. He had no interest in defending himself against gossip, but he could not bear to see Leila diminished or dismissed by people who had no understanding of her spirit. Slowly, he began to stand beside her, demonstrating to anyone who doubted her that she was far from helpless. Leila, emboldened by Eli's unwavering support, began to show the town her true abilities. She helped with livestock, anticipated problems before they occurred, and even assisted neighbors in small but meaningful ways, revealing intelligence, intuition, and compassion that left many astonished. Together, Eli and Leila proved that the labels others had placed on her, deaf, useless, worthless, were not only inaccurate but meaningless in the face of her courage, talent, and heart. But more importantly, they learned to stop caring about outside judgment entirely. Their bond had grown strong enough that the opinions of strangers could no longer shake their sense of trust and family. In the evenings after long days of work and moments of triumph, Eli would watch Leila walk across the fields, her movements confident, her laughter ringing through the air, and he would feel a deep pride and awe at the person she was becoming. The town's skepticism and prejudice served only to solidify what they shared: a partnership built on patience, respect, and a shared understanding of the hardships they had each endured. What had begun as a solitary rancher rescuing a child for $1 evolved into a quiet defiance against a world that underestimated her, a demonstration that love, trust, and belief in one another could overcome even the harshest judgments. By standing together, Eli and Leila not only proved her worth to the town, but also more profoundly discovered the depth of their own resilience and the transformative power of unwavering support, laying the foundation for the shocking discoveries, and life-altering bonds yet to come. One afternoon, as Eli and Leela were repairing a section of fence near the far pasture, he noticed something that made him pause. She reacted instantly to a distant bird call, flinching and turning before any sound had reached him. Confused and curious, Eli began testing her subtly, speaking softly from across the yard, and watching her responses. To his astonishment, Leela seemed to hear him perfectly, reacting to words he thought she couldn't perceive. Hesitant at first, she finally revealed the truth. She was not deaf. Her deafness had been a shield, a carefully constructed defense against a world that had treated her cruelly. She had learned early that if she remained silent, people would overlook her, underestimate her, and leave her alone, and so she had hidden her voice and her hearing for safety. Eli's initial reaction was a whirlwind of surprised disbelief and even a fleeting sense of betrayal, but as he looked into her eyes filled with honesty, courage, and vulnerability, he realized that the truth did not diminish her. It magnified her strength. She had endured neglect, fear, and the harsh judgment of others. Yet she had navigated the world with intelligence, adaptability, and resilience. Eli felt a surge of admiration and love, recognizing that the girl he had brought into his life was far more remarkable than he had ever imagined. Her choice to reveal her secret, not out of necessity, but out of trust, was a testament to the bond they had forged, a bond built on patience, understanding, and shared vulnerability. In that moment, Eli understood that the labels society had placed on her were meaningless. Leela's true worth was defined not by what others assumed about her, but by her courage, her insight, and the remarkable spirit that had carried her through hardship. The revelation also deepened their connection. It was no longer just about care, protection, or mutual learning. It was about trust, acceptance, and the recognition that each had found in the other a partner capable of seeing beyond appearances, valuing the essence of a person rather than the misconceptions imposed by the world. From that day forward, their interactions took on a new depth, filled with shared laughter, whispered secrets, and the kind of understanding that only emerges when someone trusts you enough to reveal their truest self. The discovery did not change who Leela was. It illuminated her brilliance, her bravery, and the profound bond she and Eli had built, proving that love and connection can grow from patience, respect, and the courage to reveal oneself fully, even after years of solitude and silence. With Leela's secret finally revealed, Eli and she stepped into a new chapter of their lives, one defined not by labels, fear, or judgment, but by trust, understanding, and an unwavering bond that had grown through shared hardship, patience, and discovery. The ranch, once a place of solitude and routine, now resonated with laughter, conversation, and the quiet rhythm of two lives intertwined in ways neither had expected. Eli found himself teaching Leela more than chores or ranch work. He shared his thoughts, hopes, and small dreams, and she responded with insight, intelligence, and an intuitive understanding that often surprised him. In turn, Leela thrived in the freedom of being seen and valued for who she truly was, her confidence and joy shining through in everything she did. From guiding the cattle safely across fields to helping with daily tasks and even offering advice and solutions Eli had never considered. Together, they transformed the ranch into a home, a sanctuary of safety, warmth, and belonging, where both could grow, heal, and embrace the life they had long been denied. The town, once skeptical and judgmental, slowly recognized the depth of their partnership, observing not a child purchased for $1 and a lonely man, but a family built on respect, resilience, and love. Eli realized that the dollar he had spent to bring Leela home had been a mere transaction in comparison to the priceless gift she had given him: connection, purpose, and the rediscovery of his own capacity to care, trust, and love. Leela, once cautious, silent, and reserved, blossomed into a confident, perceptive, and joyful young girl, secure in the knowledge that she was seen, valued, and cherished. Their relationship, forged through patience, challenges, and shared discoveries, became a testament to the transformative power of trust and empathy, proving that even the most unlikely beginnings, a simple $1 transaction, a child labeled as deaf, and a lonely rancher could lead to a lifelong bond stronger than either could have imagined. As the sun set over the fields painting the sky in hues of gold and rose, Eli and Leela stood side by side, not as rescuer and rescued but as family companions and friends, whose hearts had been forever changed by the courage to connect, the patience to understand, and the love that had grown quietly, steadily, and unshakably between them. In the end, The $1 transaction that had seemed so small became the beginning of a life rich with trust, joy, and the unimaginable warmth of a bond that neither time nor circumstance could ever break.